This is in 1981. This is the height up to 1985 of the Cold War and the years of the spy.
He's a little corny. Like, it's a strange casting choice. Like,
they're all corny.
But they had to be a really shitty travel agency and the worst bosses who were never there and never paying attention to the real business.
And then she picks him, and then Philip gets mad at her and gets angry. And she's like, no, but I picked you. And
it's a very interesting premise, given that, that's what they do for their entire lives. They lie to their children every day. They lie to everyone around them every day. And I guess Elizabeth thought, what's the point of not extending that lie a little bit further?
I forgot actually how fine Gregory was actually.
Russia, I indicated, is a geopolitical foe.
The Cold War's been over for 20 years.
Make sure I don't do any spying around here.
No, you better not.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000.
The 1980s are now calling to ask for their foreign policy back.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of The Illegals. This is episode 3, titled Gregory, season 1, episode 3. Guys, this one I thought was very heavy, especially the last scene, which we'll get to in a moment. And I'd forgotten about this from the first time that I saw it. But this was kind of getting deeper, I thought, into both the backstory about Philip and Elizabeth, and also about Elizabeth's backstory, actually much more so than Philip's, and also just about the way that the KGB recruited people who were American to spy for them and to help them out during the Cold War. I think going all the way back, if I'm not mistaken, to Elizabeth said that she met Gregory during the Martin Luther King protests. So this must have been at least 1968 or earlier. So this is long-standing, at least a 13-year relationship, probably even longer. Thoughts, ideas, comments? Nina or Michelle?
Well, I wrote down my favorite line in this episode was, lied? What does that even mean to us?
You've lied to me for 15 years.
Lied? What does it even mean to us?
I don't lie to you, Elizabeth. I never have.
It's when Elizabeth and Philip are having kind of this heated argument as he's going to get directions from the center about what to do with the widow of their former comrade. And he finds out, because Gregory is, I guess, feeling a bit sour that Elizabeth rejected him after this long on again, off again, or maybe mostly on, we're not really quite sure, relationship. Of course, he outs Elizabeth to Philip, and Philip kind of calls her out for lying, but it's a very interesting premise, given that, that's what they do for their entire lives. They lie to their children every day. They lie to everyone around them every day. And I guess Elizabeth thought, what's the point of not extending that lie a little bit further? And I thought especially powerful when Gregory said to Philip, let her have this one thing that's real, like how cutting. And it's interesting because you see this push and pull with Elizabeth, obviously having made a decision and seeing her past kind of come back to bite her in the butt in this very high stakes situation where they've got to keep it together.
Yeah, I agree. I forgot actually how fine Gregory was. Actually, I was like, good for you, Russell. But no, I also found it interesting, Nina, as you're saying, that it's just such an interesting thing. They have to lie all the time, but she was also keeping this lie from Philip the whole time too. And I also think that sometimes we make characters on TV, the woman, more like emotional and more whatever, but Philip seems to be playing that role at the beginning of the series where he's in his feelings all the time and he believes more. And you get to it at the end where Carrie does, or Elizabeth apologizes and tells him how it all started. But I feel like she starts as more of the harder character that is more atypical in the men or the manosphere, right? But she's more of the quote unquote man, I feel like, in the relationship in terms of emotions and all of that, which is not great to say, I don't like that, but I think it's an interesting point to think that she's kind of wearing the pants, so to say, in the relationship sometimes.
Well, it took me back to that scene that we saw in the pilot where they walk into that hotel room. They've just arrived in the United States, the air conditioner, all that. And he touches her ponytail. Philip touches Elizabeth's ponytail, and she says, "I'm not ready."
I'm not ready.
No, we're...
And he was like, "Oh, of course." He's like, "But they are going to expect us to have children at some point," which I thought was like a little like weird or anything. But and then he walks over to the back of the room and he's like in the closet or something. And he says, "Unless you don't think I'm attractive." And she just immediately changes the subject. She's like, "So what do you think they're going to have us do for like whatever it was?" It just didn't want to talk about it.
They'll expect us to have children eventually. Or I don't know, maybe you just don't find me attractive.
What do you think so far?
And also in the pilot, he comes up behind her in the kitchen. This is in the present day of 1981, and gives her like a kiss on the neck. And she's also emotionally not in a good place because of who they have hiding out in the trunk and everything and the history there. But and he says, "I'm your husband," or "You're my wife," or something like that. And she says, "Is that right?"
Stop.
You're my wife.
Is that right?
And I just thought that it really kind of set the stage for the emotional investment. And I think it just shows even more in this episode that Philip, it seems as though Philip loved her from like day one. And she is just now joining him.
It never really happened that way for us, did it?
No.
And I'm so sorry. I wish that it had. But I feel like it's happening now.
In the relationship for the first time. And it's kind of sad. And you see the tear kind of come down Philip's face in the end of the episode when they're sitting at the kitchen table. It kind of breaks your heart a little bit.
But I like
also
that.
Kind of but also kind of excited for them too.
You don't think of them as, because we know them as a couple 15 years in, right? But at the end of the episode, she says, "You were a strange man. I was in a strange country. Everything was strange. I didn't know anything. I don't, that would be so awkward thinking. Imagine if you were put in a different country with some random stranger that you're supposed to be in love with, right?" And so I find that that was interesting at the end. It made me think of them in a different light because yes, they're spies and they're not good people, obviously, but it is interesting when you think about it that way because they are not in love technically at first.
Yeah.
It's good. Michelle, because she, I think you said that she seems to be the tough one all the time. She doesn't seem to have affection. And so Gregory was important, I think, to say that she did fall in love with somebody. There was a relationship there, and it makes the shift to Philip all the more important.
It's like she finally let down her guard. She finally felt emotionally vulnerable with Philip to the point where she felt like there was finally a connection with him. And then she ended up picking him. And then she picks him, and then she's exposed with Gregory because Gregory feels scorned and goes and exposes her. And then Philip, gets mad at her and gets angry. And she's like, "No, but I picked you." And he's like, "Is that all you have?" It's like, "Well, what do you expect? It's Elizabeth. She picked you. Like that's for me. Like you can't really expect that
to win
at that point in time because she's not really an emotionally open and vulnerable person to begin with. So for her to just have picked Philip and said like, "No, he's the one that I want to be with." Like she finally came around at the end and was able to open up. But in the moment, like I can't really fault her because I kind of feel like that sometimes that in the moment you can't really open up, but she did. And I'm proud of her for it. And she kind of had that kind of circular moment and she felt that emotional connection with Philip and she was able to articulate it at the end.
Also, just really quick, Gregory, when he brings it up to Philip, when they're like at the safe house in Philadelphia and they've got the widow in the other room with the baby, I'm like, is this really the time that we're going to start talking about this?
Do you love her?
What?
We met at the SCLC meeting to march with Dr. King in Chicago. We just clicked. She was recruiting me for the KGB. Me and her against the world. I'd have a little piece of something real.
Well, when else are they really going to be together? Did they even have is what's not clear to me is, did Philip and Gregory have any kind of relationship prior to this, or was he the guy Elizabeth was running?
Right.
Like, I don't have the sense that they were both running him jointly. Olga, I guess that's my question for you. How did these? It's not out of the realm, obviously, that you have these civil rights leaders who, were disappointed in the United States and therefore, I think, saw something more noble in a country that we all know is not noble, but I think idealistically kind of saw this, right? How are they as recruitment figures? You would know this from your research.
Well, just to bring everything back, these are KGB operatives with all the emotion and everything. And, whether she loved this one or that one, I mean, at the same time, they were contemplating carrying out their KGB operation at the moment of basically killing a woman with a baby, which then they delivered, the baby and the woman to, the handler. Who then ended up killing the woman and stealing the baby. So these are KGB operatives, regardless of all of this emotion. But it's interesting because the KGB really focused on the civil rights movement. Don't ever say KGB and MLK in one sentence, because I made the mistake a decade ago saying something on Twitter and was swarmed with Russian bots. But they heavily targeted Martin Luther King's movement and, frankly, all civil rights movements, activists. And here you see the same thing happening, and it was over ideology at the time. Now, pretty much, not the FSB or SVR, Russia's current security services. They have no ideology except corruption. And the people they recruit, for the most part, do it for money. But in this case, during the 60s, 70s, 80s, a lot of the people that were recruited based on ideology. At the same time, they were also stealing nuclear secrets, even though this was focused on specifically Gregory and his role and how she recruited him, somewhere in the 60s. At the same time, there was, a few minutes in the episode where they went back to they call it suitcase with the America's nuclear secrets. They were very focused on recruiting Black activists at the time, and it never changed. The current security services is doing the same. Just a few years ago, there was a Russian operative. For some reason, our FBI, said that he was not a Russian agent, but he was working at the direction of Russian security services. He was a Russian agent, and he had opened up an organization, and specifically to recruit Black Americans in the United States. Also, he had operations in UN and Africa, but for the purpose of the United States, he was recruiting Black activists and organizations, and they even interfered in local elections. So it's still happening, and that's, the basic what's old is new, and it's still happening, and, you still have Russia, recruiting people here.
So I want to bring it back to just something that you said, Olga, which is, do people believe that Elizabeth and Philip knew that they were sending this woman to her death?
So that's what I was going to bring up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it seems like, and I'm watching it from a new lens because of Olga's comments in week 1 about how I said we're cheering for them. Mm-hmm. I think that they honestly, I don't know. That's a good question. I thought they thought she was going to be alive. But have they gone soft? And they know they had to kill her. Even Gregory was like, let's kill her and move on.
Right.
But I think they knew, because I think
they knew. Okay.
Yeah, I think they knew. But I'd love to hear other people's opinions.
I think they knew in the context of what we know now, including Olga's commentary. I was struck, this is part of that, by the quality of the spycraft in this episode. I think it got much better later in seasons, but the fact that Philip seemed shocked that Elizabeth had told Gregory everything that was going on. and brought him in. So I think that indicated to me there wasn't much of a relationship. The fact that Claudia, who we'll get to in a few minutes, rather carelessly exposed herself in public next to Philip in a way to spy on him. Not knowing about the widow and then not knowing what to do with her, it all struck me as pretty sloppy. I'm no spy. I don't know, but I was surprised by that. And then the FBI, for its part, obviously screwed up in the big chase, and there the KGB was better. So it was interesting to me that it was a bit of Keystone Cops at this point. And as I maybe that's the way it stayed in the whole series, but as I recall later in the series, they got much slicker.
I don't know. I was thinking watching this, how 99% of what they did, they wouldn't be able to do today because of the DNA, because the way they grabbed this woman, the way they held her.
Yeah.
And the baby.
Too, right?
Yeah. And the other thing was interesting is, and I think a little bit not part of the FBI procedure, how they had the Russian, the Soviet operative that they had recruited, because we're at the height. This is in 1981. This is the height up to 1985 of the Cold War and the years of the spy. And you have the Soviets recruiting Americans, and you have Americans recruiting Soviets. And here, that's a scene where you had that Soviet woman who met the head of the FBI, the counterintelligence, to give him information on what even led up to the woman who was married to the KGB operative who died in episode 1. And the baby. She's the one who handed the information to them. And the fact that it was done so openly, and the fact that, that would have never happened at that time.
Yeah, also the handoff of the money for the briefcase is really horribly risky.
Yeah.
The way it was done. And that surprised me as well.
And with the briefcase, that's what I forgot his name, Philip. That's why I was like stumbling on that. But the fact that Philip brought, the briefcase of cash, and in return he got the nuclear secrets.
That was my next question. So in the briefcase, was it the missile defense technology?
Missile defense tank.
What is this? I don't know.
Yeah. I was like trying to figure out. I was like, what is that?
They knew that Robert had gotten this source.
Okay.
Right. But they knew, but that was kind of thrown in there. It was a little bit of MacGuffin.
And also, what I thought was so strange is, do they not have anybody, is the Claudia figure supposed to be, is anybody spying on the spies? So how was this guy, Robert or whatever his name was, how was he able to have a wife and a baby without anybody on his side knowing about it?
So I was thinking about that as well. And I think there's two things going on. One, I kind of intuited, at least on this second watch through, that until this point, they weren't involved, until the abduction of the turncoat in episode 1. They weren't involved in so many of these high risk activities. Like in the meeting that Elizabeth has with the general in episode 1, he says things are going to change, right? So you have to imagine that they were kind of sleepy, right? They were doing like low risk activities until this point. And so I think it would have been possible for one of their partners to have one of these double lives if they weren't being checked up on so much. And then getting back to Claudia, Jeff, you were saying, you thought it was risky. I wonder if that was a bit of like a manipulative exercise to make, I think it was very deliberate, right? She's an older spy. She followed Philip into this diner where he's having breakfast with Paige. He notices her, then she makes herself seen, right? That's very deliberate, such that they're freaked out. And not to give too much away, but they continue to be a little bit freaked out by Granny Claudia going on into the series. And I think that's all very intentional, right? That this is a different sort of relationship that they have with their handlers than they had in the past, because they're worried about them going soft. These are higher risk operations, and they need somebody who's who's kind of governing them a little bit more in the way that she's like, she's almost like, you know how in the real Mary Poppins, not the Disney version, there's like the evil nanny. She's a little bit of the evil nanny. She's so creepy. Ugh.
Yeah.
And with her, you notice, I mean, she really follows more of that strict protocol with the KGB. And she has everything by like procedure. Whereas the first episode, you saw Elizabeth pretty much almost kind of had like a soft relationship with the handler. And like, you know, almost kind of like he felt like he was like her father, you know, looking over her. Here, this this woman is nuts. But I still was, you know, questioning how did that ad get there and how did they know that they were going to pick up and read that?
Right. I was like, he just happened to be looking at it. Like, that was weird.
Well, what was he even looking for? Because the guy's dead. So the only person that could place that ad would be the guy who's dead. So why was he even bothering looking through that newspaper?
It might be just that they place classified ads as signals. It could be any number of agents. It could be from the center, right? That they always have to read the classified section every day to pick up on those signals, because it's one of the less kind of like obvious ways that they can send messages to one another. But yeah, I mean, pretty lucky shot there, and lucky that the widow kind of did that. Or else she'd be finding herself in a lot stickier situation.
I don't know. I was thinking, would she be better off? Because if she had just called the police, she'd probably be alive. Like, she truly didn't know anything.
Yeah.
So if she had actually been taken by the FBI, she'd probably still be alive.
Yeah.
Or they might have killed her on the line, but
I had forgotten that that's how this episode ended, because I was watching.
Oh, it was heartbreaking.
With Joe, and I was like, oh, she gets in the van, and then it was like just the baby laying on the table, and I was like, no, I'd forgotten about this.
Well, and if you notice, and Olga, I think you probably would have picked up on this too. If you see in the last scene, they take the baby to Donetsk.
I saw.
So Olga, Nina, and I think immediately all had the same reaction. That baby would be dying in Ukraine right now.
Not only that, but I had my initial thought is that Russia has kidnapped 20,000+ children from occupied territory that we know of. Russia brags that they kidnapped 700,000 Ukrainian children. But you know, 20-something thousand, and that includes Donetsk. And that includes Crimea and Donetsk and Kherson and other areas. So my thought was like, oh, here, Russia kidnapping babies. More kidnapping.
So for people who don't know, Donetsk is in the Donbass. It's where it's eastern Ukraine. And back at the time, it was part of the Soviet Union. Now it's obviously its own independent country, Ukraine. But that baby would be 40.
It's my
45?
age.
Yeah.
About. Yeah. Because I was thinking, I'm like 1981, that's a little infant. Like a year older than me. At 45.
Yeah. So that baby would be 45 years old right now, living in Eastern. Well, if that baby stayed in Eastern Ukraine, that baby would be in Eastern Ukraine right now. I just had that.
And a reminder that Russia invaded Donetsk and Luhansk and Crimea in 2014. So,
and this show was aired when?
This show was
2013.
way before that. I mean, this show was aired well before Donetsk was on anybody's radar.
Yeah.
Was okay.
Yeah. So it's just a coincidence, but
maybe. Again, what I said in the first episode, it's very weird.
Well, you wonder also if they maybe chose Donetsk, and they do this in kind of the scene setter. It's an industrial city that was probably, you know, the type of person that would have been working in those factories could have been like a good, you know, Soviet citizen that they send their son off to work for the KGB sort of situation. But also I think it was maybe a little bit poetic in that he went from living in an inner city existence in Philadelphia, perhaps not the greatest, but Donetsk, especially during the Soviet era, was probably pretty bleak. And you know, he's seen in this you know, Soviet handler's arms with his little Soviet hat on, and it's just it's heartbreaking in so many ways. He's crying and his mother's not there to comfort them as
and the parent. Yeah.
And just the fact that it's Donetsk, again, like 99% of Americans wouldn't know what Donetsk is even after the invasion, never mind in 2013. And if you're thinking of the Soviet Union, I mean, you would go to Leningrad or Moscow or something well-known. And this was a very high-level operative because I believe, I forgot what department they gave, but he was part of the illegals program. So, this is someone who would have been trained at the Red Banner Institute in Leningrad. And it would be pretty much nothing with Donetsk. So the fact that popped up in 2013 is another question mark.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think they did recruit from all over the former USSR. The question is, would the parents not have known, right? Like, would the parents be just these random industrial city parents living in Ukraine, not knowing that their son, who's fluent, and by the way, you don't lose your accent when you're an adult. Like, you have to be put into that illegals program and immersed fully from the age of like 10 or under.
Not even.
Yeah. So
not even.
Well, not even.
Russian was my first language, and I still, even though I've spoken English my whole life, I still have that like undertone of an accent. But so it's stays with you forever.
Maybe. Russian was my first language. I don't know. You guys tell me if I have an undertone, but I would say everybody I know who came here when they were like 12 or older, still has a little bit of an accent. So the whole part about Elizabeth coming here as an 18-year-old or a 20-year-old, however old she was, I think she said 20, and suddenly no longer had an accent after having one.
That's TV.
Yeah.
Well, Michelle, you're an actress. What do you think? Certainly there are people who have an aptitude for dialects and mimicry to the point where
they're really, really good at it.
And you'd think that they'd choose people like that for this sort of work.
I think about it similarly, like to people who have a good ear for music or can hear music and have perfect pitch and things like that. There's just some people who are just really good at it. And some people who just aren't. I think of an actress who is really good at accents, Gwyneth Paltrow. Like, for the longest time, I thought Gwyneth Paltrow was British. She's not. She's from California. And actually, her mother, Blythe Danner, has actually been interviewed and talked about this because she's like, I think my daughter has a good ear for music, and that's what makes her so good at accents. And you even look at Matthew Rhys.
Yep.
Yeah, like no clue that guy was Welsh, no clue. And then it's so funny because I've been watching so much of this, like on my algorithm for YouTube, like blooper reels and stuff like for the show have been coming up, and you hear him go in and out of his Welsh to American accent, like in the blooper reel, and I'm like, that is wild. So wild to be so good at it, and to not just have all the practice and coaching, but just like, because there's always a part of your brain that has to go there, right? Because you're learning dialogue, you have to know your marks, like, and then also have to be speaking in a particular dialect or accent. In addition to that, to make all of this believable, it's incredible. It's incredible.
You have to call on your human emotions, whose root is in your native language.
Right. Exactly.
Well, they're doing it now in Brazil and churning out many Brazilians who are illegals and whatnot, and then sending them to Europe, all across Europe. They've already caught how many?
You reminded me, watching Seinfeld, George has a line, and he goes, "It's not a lie if you believe it."
If you believe it.
And I'm like, when Olga was talking about that, I just made me think of that line.
You know what else I wanted to ask? I wanted to ask about, to bring it back to Gregory, the namesake of the episode. So with the first time we meet him, she goes to meet him at his, apartment building, which looks like it might be government housing or something like that. And, she said, let's go talk inside. So they go inside Gregory's apartment, and she's looking at all the art on his walls. And I thought it was really interesting, the art that he had. Now, here's a question for all of you. Is that his art? Did he create that art himself? Is he the artist, or is he a collector? I don't know.
So the what did she call it? Red marshmallows?
What you think?
What's with the 2 red marshmallows?
You don't know shit about art.
No, I don't.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I was like, is that supposed to be a reference to Kandinsky? Because, you know, he had the red square. I was like, why? But I wasn't sure. And certainly, you know, one of the things that she wouldn't have been exposed to growing up in the Soviet Union was any art that went outside of socialist realism, right? And so maybe she just doesn't have that sort of taste. And of course, jazz was a project that the United States sent to the Soviet Union as a kind of a disruptive project. I'm not saying it was totally created by the United States, just for everyone who wants to shit all over me on the internet. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we funded cultural exchange as we, at least until this administration, used to do. We also funded Dr. Zhivago as a project that was distributed among. Yeah, there's a great novel about it, which I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but I'll send it for the show notes. We funded the distribution of Dr. Zhivago, particularly after it won. Was it the Nobel or the Pulitzer? God, I'm forgetting everything right now. But this was something that we did all the time. And so that was interesting to me.
Wait, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We funded Dr. Zhivago distribution.
The distribution of it, because it had been repressed in the Soviet Union.
Oh, so the distribution of it in the Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes, because it was, Pasternak was totally repressed in the Soviet Union.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, there's a great podcast called Winds of Change. I don't know if you guys listen to this, and it's fascinating. The song Winds of Change at the end of the Soviet Union. It was like this whole argument of like, was this a CIA like PSYOP thing to send Western music to the Soviet Union to galvanize them to rise up against the Soviet government, blah, 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 blah. And I mean, I won't give away the ending, but you know, I was a little disappointed. But that's crazy. I mean, I did not know about that, the Dr. Zhivago thing. I mean, but it makes sense.
The recent book about getting, sending the librarians of whatever was sending books into Eastern Europe at that time. Michelle, I want to go back to that meeting of Gregory and Elizabeth. I think that the racial aspect of this show is interesting. We mentioned in the earlier episode where Beeman makes the joke about, well, he's the only guy in the FBI who's not white, so he can do whatever he wants. And here, the way that she was directed in that, there was no sense of an American white woman in the dangerous ghetto, right, structure, which would be so common in American culture. Right. It'd be so common to set that up, and nothing of it. Very comfortable. She's comfortable with the people. They're comfortable with her. She's comfortable with whatever. And I think, and of course, then the backstory about civil rights. I think it's an interesting perspective on a Russian cultural import into American culture. And I don't know how legitimate that is or anything, but I think it was an effort to make a comment about America and race by the producers.
It's not. It's not. Because
that was their biggest operation.
Yeah, it's not. Because Russians were, first of all, I don't want to speak for all Russians, but it is a deeply racist culture. And not just like deeply racist, and not just against other white people, but specifically against minorities, but specifically against even people who are like, the Russians are racist against the Ukrainians, and they're all Slavic. Like everybody looks down on everybody.
And sorry, Julie, 1 second. Just they're racist to the point that they actually have like almost kind of like vermin language when you're talking about Georgians. And you're talking about like other former Soviets who are not ethnic white, like Muscovites. They're very like they have like very derogatory terms for them.
Not to mention deeply anti-Semitic. But I will also say the one thing that all Soviets knew is that Harlem was like the epitome of hell, because they were told that if you think things are bad here, you should see what's going on in the United States and the way they treat people there. And so when we first came here, I remember very well, my father wanted to go to Harlem just to check it out because they'd heard so much about it. My mother had a nervous breakdown. She's like, we can't, oh my God. Like, it was just total. So I don't think that part was very realistic. She would have been raised to look down on anybody who was not white.
Yes, I don't think it was a comment on Russian culture. I think it was an effort to make a comment on American culture. Trying to give us a contrast.
But I do wonder if maybe I'm going too deep here, but like she's a true believer, right? So maybe she like swallowed the Soviet propaganda about this like multinational country, which we know is a load of hooey. But like hook, line, and sinker, like if you think about the propaganda that she was raised on. So I guess she was 18 when she went over. So this would have been a little bit older than her. But in one of my Russian film classes in college, we watched the movie Circus, which is this ridiculous movie about an American circus performer, a woman who has a secret black baby scandal. And she gets found out by, I guess, her manager who wants to keep control over her career. And the movie ends with, not that this is any great spoiler, it's a good, little relic if you want to watch it, but the movie ends with him outing her, and then all of the Soviet peoples, all of the 100+ nationalities in the Soviet Union that happened to be at her circus performance, passing her baby around and singing him a lullaby, right? That's the sort of bullshit that they passed around. And so I wonder, obviously we all know what the reality of the situation is, but she's been removed from that culture for a long time. And what she was raised in was saying, this is what we're supposed to project. So maybe she went into these,
But what about the American side? I was young, but 1981, I mean, wasn't it like unheard of mixed race relationships? I mean, not unheard of, but it was like people would look and like, oh my God, why is a black person with a white person? Now, obviously, the past few decades, I grew up, it was normal. But I think in 1981, it wouldn't have been this normal. And again,
I guess my point is that she's like putting that stuff ahead of what should be, because A, it's for the cause, and B, I think as idealistic and kind of idealistic is the word, as she is, she went to those civil rights marches for work, certainly, but I think there's probably a part of her maybe that believes it. Like we certainly in later episodes will get to parts where Paige is getting involved in activism, right? And she's interested in that. And I think that interest comes from a place of like actually wanting, and I know these are complicated characters, but like wanting to change things. I don't know. Maybe I don't buy.
I have a question. I have a question for Jaclyn. Do we think that when Elizabeth shows up, when we first meet Gregory, do we think that the people around Gregory kind of recognized her, like she'd been around, like was she part of the whole crew that she was hanging out with them before? Like she was kind of known as like Gregory's girlfriend or hookup or friend or whoever? Or do we think that they were keeping it on the down low from everybody? Because I couldn't tell if Gregory and she were having this secret affair that was secret from Philip or secret from Gregory's friends, like secret from everybody.
Yeah, secret from everybody. Yeah.
What do you think?
It seemed like she knew how to maneuver her way through that neighborhood. She seemed pretty comfortable. And I didn't know if it was because she knew how to fight because she was a KGB operative or because she was familiar with them. But to get back into the little bit of a conversation as well with the emotional attachment, she describes to Philip at the end the emotional attachment that she had with Gregory, and that there was a point in time where she was connected with him. There was a cause there, and he was the only one that she was able to speak with and talk on a real emotional level.
And I met Gregory, and he was passionate about the cause. He was passionate about everything. He was passionate about me. He was the first person I felt I could really talk to.
And then he describes that same emotional level when he's explaining it to Philip, that it wasn't about race. It wasn't about, this or that. It was about the emotions of it and the connection that they had together. So I honestly believe that they were in love at one point. But I feel like that maybe that love story may have simmered down a bit, and that she ended up falling in love with Philip and she picked Philip. So she may have been able to maneuver through that neighborhood because she was familiar with it. But I think in the recent term, she was not there as much because she had picked Philip, and Philip was the man that she wanted to be with and emotionally was open and vulnerable to and attached herself to.
Yeah, I want to build off that because for the mothers on the call, I don't have children. Do you think it switched because she saw him be a parent to the children that she gave birth to? You know, did the relationship with Philip change because of that or no? You know?
I actually was about to say, you remember the first episode? I mean, they came here, and like they were here 15 years, 13 years prior, and there was no connection really, like a wall between, at least on her side. She tore down the wall because Philip decided to kill that guy who had raped her in the academy. And that is exactly like the moment, I think, that because Philip at that point was trying to convince her and say, listen, why don't we just, surrender to the Americans and go to the FBI? We could start a new life and, go into witness protection, whatever. And she absolutely wanted nothing to do with that. And you remember in that scene in the garage, she was like, Philip did not want to kill that guy until that guy apologized to her and said, I'm sorry for, what I did back then in the academy. And that's when Philip was like, what happened? What did you do? And then he killed him. And that's where I think after that the fact that he killed someone to protect her, that's where she finally tore down that wall.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there was a very distinct shift in her character after that moment. And yes, they were dumped the body into the water and then had sex in the car. Whatever else. I mean, it's in the moment.
Exactly.
But after, I'm like, oh my God, how silly. But also speaking of silly, so I want to talk a little bit about the FBI because we see more of Stan Beeman and his colleagues in this episode as well. And there's a couple things. Number one of the extras in the FBI office, he's in almost every episode, used to be my next door neighbor.
What? I should have him on the show.
I wish I don't know if he still lives there. I don't even know that I remember his name, but he lived next door to me. And I think he was a musical theater guy too, because every day around 2:00, I would hear him go, ha, ha, every single day. So when I saw him bopping around that office, I was like, oh my God, that's the guy from 2F or whatever. But there's that. And then Richard Thomas. So we see more of Richard Thomas, who's the FBI.
One boy from the Waltons.
Do you believe One Boy is a tough FBI guy? The casting.
No, I can't. This is
weird.
Okay, but not to make myself sound younger, Michelle and I are the same age. I did not know who he was. I've never even seen him.
Well, I didn't either until, he looked familiar to me when the first time we were watching it. I was like, why do I know that guy? And then I looked, it was the Waltons. I was like, I didn't really watch the Waltons, but maybe I saw it in syndication or something. But he's a little corny.
We pulled school records. She seems real.
Seems? She's real or she's not. The KGB is obviously getting better and better at cover identity.
It's a strange casting choice.
They're all corny. I think all the FBI guys are corny. Beeman is corny. They're all. I think they're supposed to be that way. In contrast,
what about Stan? I mean, the first episode, he literally you just met the neighbor and breaks into their garage.
But I think it's this exercise in contrast where you have these sexy, cool spies and Philip's got his little fucking earring. Can we talk about the earring?
Yeah, can we talk about that earring? Because that's
that's the entirety of his disguise.
By the way,
tiny earring.
She put on her red wig and he put on glasses, and I'm like, and an earring. I'm like, oh, you can still see their face.
Which is why I think they always intended to kill her because they didn't even bought if the best you can do is some really cheap frames and an earring. Guess what? If I take this off, you'll still know it's me, right?
I don't know. I didn't recognize Nina without her glasses.
No, I know. Well, at any rate, I mean, I think they're
right.
They're these corn-fed FBI agents, and you've got the sexy Soviet killers there, and I think it's meant to be that way. And that it keeps going on. I also have a question, which is, and maybe we've talked about this before, but I think we're going to keep asking it. So they went to Philadelphia in the morning, maybe the afternoon, 2-hour ride between DC and Philly. They don't get home until 4 a.m. I guess Paige is old enough to get her brother from school, but it's the 80s. I don't know. It just seems who is with the kids?
I've always had that question. First of all, who's with the kids? And second, when did Elizabeth have time to shack up with Gregory all this time? Like, she's got 2 kids. She's got a real career. She's got her spy career. She and Philip she's got her, like, when are you going to have time to have an extramarital, long-term, emotional affair when you've got everything else going on in your life?
Well, the family is unbelievable, but also the job is unbelievable. I mean, the 2 anachronisms to this is that, number one, that anyone would put messages in classified ads. There are no classified ads anymore, and there's no newspapers anymore.
Right.
And the second is that travel agencies exist.
Twitter.
Oh, right.
Right. And so, but they had to be a really shitty travel agency and the worst bosses who were never there and never paid attention to the real business. So both of them.
Well, they've got like who the guy who seems like their chief of staff who has this like suspicious Slavic accent. I'm like,
You know where the TWA vouchers got left?
No.
Damn it. Barb can't keep track of anything.
like, is he part of? Is he in on it? Like, what's going on here?
But also, when the episode opens and they're playing racquetball, Philip and Stan, and he's like, "Oh, sorry," when he accidentally hits him in the back with the ball, Philip hits Stan in the back like really hard, and he's like, "Sorry, I've just been really stressed out with work." And
I'm so sorry.
Right? Yeah.
Oh. I'm sorry. I just, I get intense when I play. It's just work stress.
Travel business must be awfully damn stressful this week, huh?
You have no idea.
And Stan goes, "Oh, is travel agent? That's a stressful job." And he's like, "Yeah, you have no idea."
But I think it's interesting too, because obviously Stan moves across the street. That's the whole premise of the series, right? But as we continue to watch episodes, they're missing every time Stan's doing a suspicious case too. So is that going to change? Did Stan notice that in the future, right? And I think that's really interesting too, because that dynamic is so interesting that they're never home when he's doing something too. So is he going to figure something out?
In answer to who's watching the kids, I just got like the worst case of nostalgia because I remember in the 80s, like there was no phones, nothing, just a landline. You leave in the morning and you come home, when it's dark, and that's it. You didn't have to call your parents. You didn't have to do anything. And for the most part,
surely they need to be fed. Like someone.
Well, who was Paige's age in the 80s? I don't know. Was I Paige's age? I guess so.
We latchkey kids.
Well, I was a latchkey
kid. She's a teenager. Yeah,
I mean,
I was a
latchkey.
She's like 12, I think.
Yeah, so Paige is like a little older than I was, but you just kind of fed yourself. Like I remember letting the toilet fire because like my parents, but unlike these horrible parents, my mom at least called me every hour from work just to make sure I was still breathing on the landline. But apparently nobody bought. Like, do they check in with Paige to make sure like she's like not watching, Dallas on the down low? Like
I'm watching
episode 1 or 2. They did have a babysitter. Do you remember?
Oh yeah.
Call the babysitter to be like, "Hey, we're going to be out till 4 a.m. and doing what? Like, what do the kids think they're doing?"
Right. I think it's just like I'm in
travel.
Travel, like a TWA flight. I have to like book. Like, how long are you going to be booking that flight till 4 a.m.? That's, I mean.
Yeah. I think about the accounts, right? You got to keep the customers happy.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. I miss travel agencies. Oh my God. I remember I grew up on Brighton, so many on every corner. And I remember, and I miss travel agencies.
Yeah.
It's nice to actually watch something in the 1980s. Like, wow, at payphones. I remember payphones. My God. And that's if you actually, very rarely needed to make a call, use a payphone, and then you could do the collect call if you had no money and whatnot. Forgot about all
that's how I used to call my mom when I was in high school. If I was like, "Come pick me up," I'd go to the payphone downstairs by the gymnasium and throw a quarter in and stuff. But on the travel agent thing, I mean, Craig, I saw you were always going to chime in. I don't know if we're thinking.
Oh, no, I was just saying it's actually coming back as a career.
That's what I was, I was like,
because people are wanting people to curate trips for them and do certain things. So maybe it's all the luxury stuff I follow online, but it's a again.
Thank God.
Same, like a lot of, I feel like I see like a lot of young women and stuff like.
Who here has used a travel agent in their life?
Maybe. Yeah.
No, although maybe
I'm my own best travel agent.
My parents used to go to the travel agency I remember this like being very young. They had to go there to get the tickets for the auto train. I remember that, but I think that was kind of
the auto train.
Yeah, the auto train. So retro.
Yeah. My mother-in-law is a travel agent, or I suppose was. She's retired now, so I have used her services. I also know that there are young women, as you mentioned, Michelle, especially young moms who like learn how to do the Disney World circuit and then offer their services to people for a lot of money. I'm just like, I want to boycott Disney. I don't know, not just because of the shenanigans recently, but like I don't need somebody to plan that vacation for me. It's Disney World. That's the whole point. Anyway, maybe we need Philip and Elizabeth.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like Philip and Elizabeth probably should have come up with a better cover than a travel agent. Because I feel like a travel agent works like 9 to 5, and I don't recall travel agents working till 10 o'clock in the morning. I mean, I guess if your client's stuck in like Zimbabwe, you have to like get them home, but that's few and far between.
I'm thinking like the last time I saw travel agents represented in like pop culture or film is My Big Fat Greek Wedding. Like she goes and works at the travel agent of her aunt or something, but they're only booking trips to Greece. Like that's the only place. They're not going anywhere else. And she seemed to have a normal schedule, I guess.
Yeah, I would think so. Not 4 a.m.
Anything else about this episode that we're missing before we wrap it up?
I found it interesting to see kind of the through line about the Americans, the title again, and how they were being pushed and pulled between being a spy and also being assimilated into the American culture and society. They were kind of getting a little soft, and maybe the Russian KGB network recognized that they were getting soft, so they changed up the handler. And, you know, I don't really think they wanted to kill the young mother. They kind of maybe felt like it in the back of their mind that she probably needed to be killed, but they didn't really want to come to grips with it. Yeah. And then they handed her off to the new KGB handler, and that new KGB handler was a bit cold. And you saw them, they kind of like stood there at the end with like a sour taste in their mouth. Like, wow, there was no emotional connection or attachment to that first initial interaction between them and their handler on a business matter. And so I think there's a through line with them being Americans and being there for so long, and the push-pull about them being assimilated but still having to continue to do their job as KGB agents, and how the lines are still meshing.
But she had to die.
Yeah.
Right?
I think that's going to be the ones that did it. I don't think that they wanted to do it. I think they knew it had to happen, but they were like, it can't be us. Like, we don't want to do it.
Well, plus it
why
was a
couldn't
double
they just send her
duty.
to Cuba, like they said? I don't know if she had to, right? She spoke Spanish. They could have built a new life for her there.
It was convenient also to make it seem as if it was the drug angle.
Yeah.
That the guy, because also John Boy demanding the victory of getting the driver's license photos in the days before DNA, and were they on to something bigger? This was a way to say, oh, it's just drugs.
Yeah, it's closure. It's closure for the FBI, or leading the FBI to some type of closure, so it wasn't open-ended, and they continued to keep searching for her.
Yeah. Because I think, to answer your question, because in Cuba, like, who knows? She could have still hooked up with the KGB. She still
they could have recruited her.
Like the FBI, she could have called, somehow gotten through the FBI to come home. Like, she doesn't have to be, who knows, right?
I'm just a softie. I'm just a softie, especially for young moms.
All of us, I know, it's horrible.
A heartbreaking ending, but the reality is that this was a totally necessary kill. I hate to say that.
Well, if she had figured out that they were spies, because they really believed that she didn't know, and when she figured out they were spies, that was the death sentence.
Yeah.
But if she hadn't figured that out,
He was listening to this weird-looking radio, writing down numbers on a pad. He was a spy. You're all spies. You're gonna kill me and the baby.
is there any scenario in which they would have let her go?
I don't think so, because he's wearing his bullshit earring, and that's his only disguise.
He went to Claire's and got some earrings, and
her husband, like, even if she hadn't figured it out, right? Her husband's missing. These rando people kidnap her off the street with her baby, take her to wherever they take her, to like a safe house. Even if she hadn't figured it out, she could have gone to the police the next day and said, this happened to me. Like, she had to go. There was no way the bottom line is the person who signed her death warrant was the guy who married her. Like as soon as that happened,
and told her to put the ad in, because he could have died. She would have never put the ad. Nobody would have known about.
So he believed that she would be made safe by his former colleagues, and he was wrong.
And I think the tragedy, other than just the obvious, like she died, that's the tragedy of that. It's she's the only one in this scenario, in this story, that didn't choose this. Like she had no idea. She didn't choose this path. She didn't choose a husband who she thought was a KGB spy. She didn't choose, she just thought that she'd met a nice young man and, got married and had a baby. And then next thing she knows, dead.
And just to end, in real life, the KGB, especially illegals, none of this they wouldn't have thought twice killing a mother. They wouldn't have thought twice killing the baby. If they had to, they would have never hesitated. And the fact that this show, again, keeps pushing this emotional angle, where in reality, two things. One, with the real KGB, they would have never put three people in the same room, Gregory, Elizabeth, and Philip, because Elizabeth and Phil is a handler to Gregory. Philip would have never been allowed to be in the same room as, that, because these are all separate operations, and the KGB kept everything separate. If the FBI somehow, burst into that house, they would have found Elizabeth, who's the handler. Then you have Gregory, who's, the recruit for the KGB working, his whole group of people, and then Philip, who's another high-level KGB operative. So that part is not real. In reality, that would have never happened.
On that note, guys,
next week we're dealing with some Reagan stuff. I think I looked ahead to next week's episodes. We had a Reagan
I will not be
storyline
here for the next 2 weeks because I'm off to Japan. Thank you. But I will see you guys when I come back.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Bon voyage.
Thank you.
And if you're
How do you say bon voyage in Russian?
Sayonara.
Счастливого пути.
And I don't know how to say like and subscribe in Russian, but if any of you, but I'll say it in English. If you're just joining us for the first time, please like and subscribe to this podcast and the Mayday Network so that you can follow along with us and watch The Americans. Fantastic.
Yeah, and please, no FSB agents. Don't like or subscribe.
No.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. You are listening to the Mayday Network.